In 1972, one man built a Vega so fast the NHRA didn't know whether to crown him a champion tradie or ban him.
In the early 1970s, drag racing was ruled by loud engines and big blocks. But then came a quiet man with a sharp mind, Bill "Grumpy" Jenkins. He built a small Chevy Vega that didn't just compete, it changed everything. This wasn't just another race car, it was a machine that rewrote the rules of pro stock. Hidden behind its modest looks was a story of pure genius, secret tricks, and one man's mission to outsmart the giants of drag racing. This is the hidden story behind Bill "Grumpy" Jenkins Vega. Before he became a legend on the drag strip, Bill Jenkins was just a quiet man from Pennsylvania who loved engines more than anything else. Born in 1930, he wasn't the loud, flashy kind of racer people expected to see in the early days of American drag racing. Instead, he was calm, serious, and always thinking. People called him Grumpy because he rarely smiled. But those who knew him well understood that behind that tough face was a brilliant mind, always searching for perfection. Jenkins studied mechanical engineering at Cornell University, one of the most respected schools in America. While others were racing for fun, he was studying how engines worked, down to the smallest detail. He didn't just want to drive fast, he wanted to understand why some cars went faster than others. Every piston, valve, and spark mattered to him. This deep curiosity became his secret weapon. When Jenkins started drag racing in the late 1950s, the sport was still wild and unorganized. Many racers built their cars in backyards and garages, trusting luck and power to win. But Jenkins approached racing like a scientist. He brought notebooks, calculators, and detailed testing data to the track. While others relied on big engines and raw horsepower, Jenkins focused on efficiency, weight balance, fuel delivery, and airflow. He believed that small changes, measured correctly, could beat brute force. By the 1960s, Jenkins had already built a reputation as one of the smartest men in racing. Chevrolet noticed him, and soon began working with him on performance development. He helped tune engines for cars like the Nova and the Camaro, turning them into serious drag machines. His cars were known not just for speed, but for reliability. They didn't blow up halfway down the track like many others. Everything Jenkins built had a purpose, and it worked like clockwork. His nickname, Grumpy, soon became part of his legend. Reporters loved to write about his short temper and no-nonsense attitude, but fellow racers respected him deeply. They knew that if Jenkins showed up, they were in for a tough race. He didn't waste words or show emotion. He let his engines do the talking, and they spoke loud and clear. As the sport grew, so did the challenge. By the end of the 1960s, pro stock racing had become the ultimate battleground for innovation. It wasn't just about who had the biggest engine anymore, it was about who understood the science behind speed. Jenkins was ready for this new era. With his engineering brain and years of testing, he was about to build something that would shock the entire racing world, a small Chevy Vega that would make history. The early 1970s were a golden era for American drag racing, a time when power ruled and bigger always seemed better. On any given weekend, the air around the tracks was filled with the roar of massive V8 engines and the smell of burning rubber. The grandstands shook as legendary names like Sox and Martin, Don Nicholson and Dino Don lined up their machines, each trying to prove who had the mightiest engine in America. The crowd didn't come for quiet precision, they came for thunder and smoke. Pro Stock was the newest and most exciting class in the NHRA. It was meant to showcase factory hot rods, cars that looked like what you could buy at a Chevrolet, Ford or Mopar dealership, but under the hood, they were monsters. The rules said the cars had to use factory body styles and engines from the same manufacturer, but everything else was open to innovation. That made Pro Stock a battle of both brains and muscle, and at that time, muscle still seemed to be winning. Every racer believed in the same formula. The bigger the engine, the better the chance of victory. 427 cubic inches, 454, even 500 cubic inches, the numbers just kept going up. The tracks were ruled by these big block beasts, each one capable of pushing over 700 horsepower. To many, small block engines were a joke. They were for street cars, not for serious drag racing. But the NHRA rulebook had a hidden balance, something that Bill Jenkins noticed when others ignored it. The rules allowed smaller engines to compete at lower minimum car weights. That meant if a racer could build a lighter car with a smaller engine that made enough power, they might have a real shot. It was a loophole that few had the courage to test. Most racers didn't believe it was worth the risk. Jenkins, however, saw opportunity. By this time, Jenkins had already proven himself as a top tuner and driver. His earlier Camaros and Novas had won races and earned respect, but he wanted more than trophies. He wanted to prove that engineering could outsmart brute force. He believed the future of pro stock wasn't in making bigger engines, but in making smarter cars. As the 1971 season closed, Jenkins spent more time studying weight ratios, aerodynamics, and tire grip than anyone else in the pits. He watched how cars launched, how they shifted, how they handled air resistance. Every observation went into his notes. He wasn't just racing, he was preparing for a revolution. The stage was set. The 1972 season was coming, and Jenkins had a plan no one saw coming. While the rest of the field prepared their heavy, loud, and oversized machines, he quietly began designing something small, sharp, and incredibly quick. A car that would break the laws of pro stock physics and shock everyone watching. That car would be the Chevrolet Vega. When Bill Jenkins first laid eyes on the Chevrolet Vega, few could imagine it as a serious drag racer. It was small, light, and built as an economy car, the kind you'd expect to see on a grocery run, not on a quarter-mile strip. But to Jenkins, it was a blank canvas. He saw something others didn't. Perfect weight balance, short wheelbase, and a body shape that could slice through air like a bullet. While others laughed, Jenkins quietly began planning what would become one of the most important cars in drag racing history. Chevrolet had recently introduced the Vega in 1971, hoping to compete with compact imports like the Datsun and Toyota. It was never meant to be fast, but it was light. That caught Jenkins's attention. He realized that if he could combine that lightweight design with a powerful small-block engine, he could beat cars twice its size. The NHRA rulebook allowed smaller engines to carry less weight, and Jenkins knew that advantage could be worth gold on the starting line. In late 1971, he began working closely with Chevrolet engineers, turning the humble Vega into a purpose-built drag machine. Every inch of the car was re-engineered. Jenkins stripped away everything that wasn't essential, soundproofing, trim, even parts of the chassis, until the Vega became a featherweight shell with perfect weight distribution. He calculated how much power he needed to make up for the smaller engine size, and started designing a new motor from scratch. Under the hood, he built a 331 cubic inch small block engine, smaller than what his rivals were using, but far more efficient. He perfected the compression ratio, redesigned the intake manifold, and crafted a fuel delivery system that wasted no drop of power. Jenkins didn't just build an engine, he built a system where every part worked in perfect harmony. The transmission, rear suspension, and tire setup were all tuned for instant traction. The transmission, rear suspension, and tire setup were all tuned for instant traction. While other cars struggled to transfer power to the ground, Jenkins' Vega launched like a slingshot, fast, straight, and consistent. The car didn't rely on brute strength, it relied on perfect balance. When he finally brought the Vega to the track for testing, it looked almost modest. White paint, simple graphics, nothing flashy. But when Jenkins hit the throttle, everyone stopped laughing. The car screamed down the strip, smooth and deadly accurate. In just seconds, it proved what Jenkins had been saying all along. Smart engineering could beat raw power. By early 1972, Grumpy's Toy X, as the Vega was soon nicknamed, was ready for battle. It wasn't just another race car, it was a statement. Jenkins had built something the world had never seen before, a small block, lightweight pro stock car that could take on the giants. And when it hit the starting line for the first time, drag racing would never be the same again. When the 1972 season began, the drag racing world didn't know what was coming. The pits were filled with the usual giants, massive Camaros, Barracudas and Mustangs, each roaring with big block engines ready to tear the asphalt apart. But then, from the corner of the staging lanes, rolled something that looked almost out of place, a small white Chevrolet Vega with Grumpy's Toy X written across the side. Most racers smiled politely. A few even laughed. They thought Jenkins had finally lost it. But when the light turned green, those smiles disappeared. The Vega launched like nothing anyone had ever seen. It didn't jump or wobble, it just hooked perfectly and shot forward with clean, silent aggression. Down the track it went, shifting flawlessly through each gear, and when it crossed the finish line, the crowd erupted. The scoreboard told a story no one could believe. The little Vega had just beaten cars with engines nearly twice its size. That first pass changed everything. Suddenly, everyone was paying attention. Jenkins had done what experts said couldn't be done. He had outsmarted the big block monsters. His secret wasn't raw power, it was precision. The Vega's 331 cubic inch engine was a masterpiece of balance and timing. Every part was tuned to perfection. From the carburetor jets to the spark advance curve, it was smooth, efficient, and consistent. The key was in the launch. Jenkins had spent months studying traction and weight transfer. He discovered how to make the Vega squat just right off the line, planting the rear tires with maximum grip. That first 60 feet, the most critical part of any drag race, became his battlefield. Once he got that perfect start, the rest was easy. The Vega's lighter body and razor-sharp shifting carried it past every challenger. Fans started calling it the giant killer. Race after race, Jenkins proved it wasn't luck. The Vega won consistently, forcing competitors to rethink everything they knew about pro stock racing. NHRA officials tore the car down multiple times, expecting to find hidden tricks or illegal parts. But every time, it passed inspection. The car was legal, just smarter. Behind the wheel, Jenkins stayed calm, as always. No showmanship, no trash talk, just focus. His eyes locked on the Christmas tree lights, his hands steady on the shifter. The Vega responded like it was part of him. Together, man and machine formed a connection that left rivals speechless. By mid-season, Jenkins Vega had become the talk of every pit in America. Racers studied it, fans loved it, and engineers at Chevrolet proudly watched their little compact car turn into a legend. Bill "Grumpy" Jenkins had once again proven that true power doesn't always come from size, it comes from understanding, discipline, and pure mechanical genius. But with success came suspicion. Rivals couldn't believe a small Vega could win so cleanly. Whispers started spreading through the paddock. Maybe Jenkins had found a loophole too good to be true, and soon those whispers would grow into controversy. As the Vega continued to dominate race after race, the drag racing world started buzzing with questions. How could a small car with a small block engine be this unstoppable? Jenkins had always been known for his sharp engineering, but this time it almost looked too perfect. Every run was consistent, every pass was fast, and the Vega never seemed to lose power or traction. Competitors began to whisper, maybe Grumpy wasn't just clever, maybe he was hiding something. By mid-1972, Jenkins Vega had won so many events that even NHRA officials couldn't ignore the rumors. Some racers claimed the engine displacement wasn't legal. Others said the car weighed less than the minimum limit. There were even wild stories about hidden nitrous systems or secret fuel mixtures. The pressure grew so intense that NHRA decided to strip the car down after several races completely. Inspectors removed panels, measured parts, and checked every detail. They even pulled apart the engine piece by piece. But what they found wasn't cheating, it was genius. Jenkins had simply out-engineered everyone. His cylinder heads were custom designed for better airflow. His intake manifold shape was unlike anything they had seen, and his carburetors were tuned with surgical precision. He had pushed every rule right to the edge, but never crossed the line. Jenkins didn't talk much during this time. He didn't defend himself in the press or argue with competitors. When asked about the accusations, he simply said, "The rules are the same for everyone. I just read them carefully." That was classic Grumpy, quiet confidence, backed by facts and results. But the controversy didn't die. Every time the Vega showed up at a race, eyes followed it. Crews watched his every move in the pits, trying to catch a secret. Some racers even started copying his ideas. Lighter chassis, smaller engines, better balance. The pro stock world was changing fast, and it was all because of one man and one car. Behind closed doors, NHRA officials debated adjusting the rules. They worried that Jenkins' success might make the big block cars obsolete, and sure enough, after his dominating 1972 season, rule changes soon arrived. The minimum weights were adjusted, and some allowances for smaller engines were tightened. It was clear, Jenkins had changed the game so much that the rulebook itself had to evolve to keep up. For Jenkins, that was the ultimate compliment. He didn't care about fame or money, he cared about innovation. The Vega was proof that knowledge could rewrite history. Even when the rules changed, his name stayed at the top of every conversation. He had forced the entire drag racing world to think differently. The Vega's success marked the beginning of a new era, one where science, not just strength, ruled the strip. But as the cheers faded and the debates cooled, one question remained. What would be the legacy of this small white Vega that had once humbled giants? When the dust settled on the 1972 season, one thing was clear. Bill "Grumpy" Jenkins Vega wasn't just a fast car, it was a turning point in racing history. It proved that the future of speed belonged not only to muscle, but to mind. The Vega had started as a small, forgotten compact car. Yet under Jenkins' hands, it became a symbol of American ingenuity. What made it powerful wasn't its size, but the precision and intelligence behind every bolt, valve, and wire. The Vega changed how racers and builders thought about performance. Before Jenkins, drag racing was a contest of who could build the biggest and loudest engines. After Jenkins, it became a contest of who could build the smartest. His small block setup forced competitors to think differently about weight, airflow, and mechanical efficiency. Suddenly, every team wanted data, tuning sheets, and test runs. The sport began to move from guesswork to engineering. For Chevrolet, the Vega's success was a badge of honor. It showed that even their smallest model could make history in the right hands. Fans loved it, not just because it won, but because it felt like an underdog story. Here was a car built for everyday roads, defeating monsters built for glory. It reminded people that with the right mind behind the wheel, anything was possible. Jenkins continued to race and build engines throughout the 1970s, but the Vega remained his masterpiece. It was the perfect blend of his two strengths, logic and instinct. Racers respected him, not just as a competitor, but as a teacher. His tuning methods, his notes, and his calm discipline became lessons for a new generation of drag racers. Many of the tuning principles he pioneered, precise fuel metering, consistent combustion, and balanced weight distribution, are still used today. Over time, Grumpy's Toy X became more than just a car. It became a legend. Collectors still talk about it in hushed, admiring tones. Photos of that white Vega, with its clean lines and no-nonsense look, hang in garages and workshops across America. It stands as a reminder that racing greatness doesn't come from breaking rules, but from understanding them better than anyone else. When Bill Jenkins passed away in 2012, tributes poured in from across the racing world. Drivers, engineers, and fans all said the same thing. He changed how people thought about power. His Vega had done more than win races. It had changed the language of speed itself. Today, whenever a finely tuned small block engine roars down a drag strip, a little of Jenkins' spirit rides with it. The Vega may be gone, but its legacy still lives in every clever innovation and every racer who believes that true performance begins in the mind. Bill "Grumpy" Jenkins' Vega wasn't just a race car, it was a symbol of intelligence beating raw power. In a time when size ruled the strip, Jenkins proved that real strength comes from understanding. His small white Vega changed drag racing forever, showing that engineering and logic could rewrite the rulebook. Even today, his name still means something special. Every racer who studies balance, airflow, or traction follows in his footsteps, whether they know it or not. Jenkins didn't shout for attention, he earned it through results. His quiet confidence, sharp mind, and fearless innovation turned a small Chevy into a legend. More than 50 years later, the story of Grumpy's Toy X still inspires builders, drivers, and dreamers. It reminds us that speed is not just about horsepower, it's about heart, patience, and the courage to do things differently. So the next time you see an old dragster roar down the strip, remember the man who proved that brains can beat brawn. This was the hidden story behind Bill "Grumpy" Jenkins' Vega, a car that made science faster than muscle. If you love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to Regal Rides, where every classic has a secret, and every legend has a heartbeat.